"You're not our daughter." My mom said it loud enough for the entire room to hear, right as my dad raised his glass and smiled like nothing was wrong. We were at their 30th anniversary dinner, surrounded by family, co-workers, people who had watched me grow up. I was standing right beside them, mid-toast, holding a glass I suddenly couldn't feel in my hand. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. No one laughed. No one questioned it. I looked at her, waiting for the punchline, but she wouldn't meet my eyes. And my dad? He just nodded, like this had already been decided somewhere I was never invited. "You should sit down," he added quietly. That's when I noticed the man near the table, a lawyer, holding a folder with my name on it. And suddenly, I realized this wasn't a mistake. The room felt smaller, like all the air had been pulled out at once. My aunt shifted in her chair, avoiding me. One of my dad's business partners leaned closer to his wife and whispered something behind his hand. No one stepped in. No one asked what they meant. I didn't move. I didn't sit. "Say it again," I said, my voice steady even though my chest felt tight. My mom finally looked at me, but there was nothing soft in her expression. No hesitation. "You're not our daughter," she repeated, slower this time. A glass clinked somewhere in the silence. I swallowed, forcing myself to think past the shock. This wasn't just cruel, it was planned. The timing, the audience, the lawyer. My grip tightened around the stem of my glass before I set it down carefully on the table. "If that's true," I said, glancing briefly at the folder in the man's hands, "then why is my name on his paperwork?" My dad's smile flickered for the first time, and that was all I needed to see. My dad's smile didn't come back. It just stopped, like he forgot how to hold it. For a second, no one moved. Then he cleared his throat and adjusted his jacket, stepping slightly in front of my mom like he could block the moment from spreading. "Alara," he said under his breath, sharp enough that only I was supposed to hear. "This isn't the time." I almost laughed at that. "Then when was the time?" I asked, just loud enough that the people closest to us leaned in. "Because this seems very scheduled." A few heads turned toward the lawyer again. He shifted his weight, clearly uncomfortable, but didn't step away. That told me everything I needed to know. This wasn't emotional. It was procedural. I straightened, forcing myself to stay calm, even as something cold settled in my chest. "You don't get to say something like that in a room full of people and then tell me to sit down." My mom exhaled slowly, like I was the one making things difficult. "We didn't want it to happen like this." "But it is happening like this," I replied. "So explain it." Silence stretched again, but this time it wasn't shock. It was calculation. I could feel it. They were deciding how much to say. That was familiar. Growing up, there were always things I wasn't told. Conversations that stopped when I entered the room. Documents my dad would handle for me. Questions that got brushed off with, "It's not important right now." I used to believe that. Now it felt like I'd been living inside something carefully edited. My dad finally spoke again, louder this time, addressing the room like he needed control back. "There are details about Alara's background that recently came to light." Recently. That word landed wrong immediately. "Recently?" I repeated. "You're saying you just found out I'm not your daughter?" He didn't answer right away. And that hesitation, too long, too measured, tightened something in my gut. "We confirmed it," he said finally. "Confirmed. Not discovered. Not surprised. Confirmed." I let that sit between us. "So you already knew," I said quietly. My mom's lips pressed into a thin line, but she didn't deny it. Neither of them did. Around us, the whispers grew louder. People weren't pretending anymore. This wasn't a family misunderstanding. It was something bigger, something deliberate. I glanced again at the lawyer. The folder was still in his hands, angled slightly toward me now. I could see the edge of printed pages. My name, Alara Voss, typed cleanly across the top sheet. Why would my name still be there? If they were trying to erase me, unless they couldn't. A memory flickered, recent, uncomfortable. My dad asking me to review some routine documents a few weeks ago. My mom insisting I bring my ID, the way they'd both watched me sign something just a little too closely. At the time, it felt off. Now it felt connected. "What's in the folder?" I asked. My dad's jaw tightened. "It's just paperwork, to clarify." "No," I cut in. "You don't get vague now, not after that." I gestured lightly toward my mom. "What is it?" The lawyer finally spoke, voice careful. "Miss Voss, these documents are meant to formalize certain legal distinctions." Legal. Not personal, not emotional, legal. Something shifted inside me then, not panic, not even hurt. Focus. Because whatever this was, it wasn't about truth. It was about control. I took a step closer, enough that the lawyer instinctively held the folder tighter. "Formalize what?" I asked. My dad stepped in again, quicker this time. "If you just sign, we can handle this privately." There it was. Not if you understand. Not if you agree. Just sign. I looked between them, my parents or whatever they were, and for the first time I didn't feel confused. I felt managed. Like this moment had been designed and I'd just walked into it exactly the way they expected. Except for one thing. I hadn't signed anything yet, and judging by the way my dad was watching me now, that was a problem. "Why do you need my signature so badly?" I asked. Neither of them answered, but the lawyer shifted again, just slightly, and that was enough to tell me. This wasn't optional for them. It was necessary, and that meant I had something they didn't. The lawyer shouldn't have looked nervous, but he did. Not panicked, not guilty, just careful. Like every word from this point forward mattered more than it was supposed to, and that made this a lot bigger than a family secret. I didn't reach for the folder. Instead, I folded my arms slightly, grounding myself. "You said legal distinctions. That doesn't sound like a DNA test." A few people nearby shifted uncomfortably. Someone quietly set their glass down. No one was pretending anymore. This had turned into something else entirely. My dad exhaled sharply. "Ilara, don't make this harder than it needs to be." "I'm not the one who started this," I said. "You did, in front of everyone." That hit. I saw it land. He turned slightly, lowering his voice again. "We were trying to handle this cleanly." "By announcing I'm not your daughter at your anniversary party?" I tilted my head. "That's your version of clean?" My mom finally stepped in, her voice softer, but it didn't feel kinder. It felt rehearsed. "We found out a few years ago," she said. "There were discrepancies in records. We had it verified." A few years. The words echoed louder than anything else in the room. "You knew," I said slowly, "for years." She didn't deny it. Neither did he. That confirmation settled something heavy in my chest, but it also sharpened everything else. Because if they'd known for years, then tonight wasn't about discovery. It was about timing. "What changed?" I asked. My dad's eyes flicked, just for a second, to the folder. That was enough. I turned back to the lawyer. "Go ahead, explain it to me." He hesitated, glancing at my parents like he was waiting for permission. That told me even more. "You can speak," I said, my tone calm but firm. "I'm the one you need something from, right?" Another pause. Then finally, "These documents," he said carefully, "acknowledge that you are not the biological child of Daniel and Marlene Voss, and relinquish any familial claims moving forward." Relinquish. The word landed wrong immediately. "Familial claims?" I repeated. "That's vague." "It ensures a clean separation," my dad cut in quickly. "No confusion, no future complications." Clean for who? I didn't say it out loud, but I didn't need to. It was already hanging there. I stepped closer, just enough to see more of the page. Lines of text, legal phrasing, my name repeated over and over, but one section caught my eye. Verification of identity. My stomach tightened. "Why is my identity being verified?" I asked. Silence. Again. too long. My mom's fingers tightened around her glass. My dad didn't look at me this time. He looked at the lawyer. That was the first crack. You said this was about me not being your daughter, I continued. So why does this read like I'm confirming who I am to someone else? No one answered. But they didn't need to. Because suddenly, everything they'd done over the past few months started lining up. The questions about my documents, the insistence on signatures, the way my dad had pushed me to update my records. This wasn't just about cutting me out. It was about securing something tied to me. I looked back at them, slower this time. What do you get if I sign? I asked. My dad's jaw flexed. It's not about that. That means it is, I said immediately. The room had gone completely still now. Even the whispers had stopped. Everyone was listening, waiting, watching. And for the first time since this started, my dad didn't have control of the room anymore. I let the silence stretch, then asked the one question he clearly didn't want. What happens if I don't sign? This time it was the lawyer who answered. Quiet, precise. If you choose not to sign, then any assets or accounts tied solely to your verified identity would remain exclusively under your control. Assets, accounts. There it was. Not family, not truth, money. I felt something shift completely into place. This wasn't about disowning me. This was about separating me from something they couldn't take without me agreeing to it. I looked back at my parents, really looked at them, and for the first time, they didn't look like people revealing the truth. They looked like people who needed something and were running out of ways to get it. So that's it, I said quietly. You do this here, like this, because you thought I'd panic and sign without thinking. Neither of them denied it, not even a little. I nodded once, more to myself than them. Then I glanced at the lawyer again. One more thing, I said. He stiffened slightly. Of course. I held his gaze. If I don't sign... I paused, just long enough to feel the entire room lean in. Who exactly loses access to whatever this is? The lawyer hesitated. And in that hesitation, my dad's composure finally cracked. My dad moved too fast. Don't answer that, he snapped, stepping forward like he could physically block the words from coming out. Too late. That reaction alone said more than anything the lawyer could have explained. I didn't even look at my dad. My eyes stayed locked on the lawyer. You can answer, I said calmly. The room had gone completely silent again, but this time it wasn't confusion. It was anticipation. The lawyer adjusted his grip on the folder, clearly weighing his position. Then, carefully. Any assets tied to Miss Voss's verified identity would remain inaccessible to any third party without her consent. Third party. Not family, not parents. Third party. The word cut clean through everything. I let out a slow breath, nodding slightly. So if I don't sign, they don't get access. No one corrected me. Behind me, I heard a chair shift. Someone muttered something under their breath. The atmosphere had flipped completely. This wasn't a family dispute anymore. It was exposure. I turned back to my parents, tilting my head just slightly. How long? I asked. My mom frowned. What? How long have you known there was something tied to my name? I clarified. Not just that I wasn't yours. This. I gestured lightly toward the folder. Her silence answered faster than words could. My dad tried to recover. It's not what you think. Then explain it, I said. But he didn't, because he couldn't explain it without confirming it. And we both knew that. A memory surfaced, sharp this time, about a year ago. A letter that came addressed to me, official looking. My dad had taken it before I could even open it. Just junk, he'd said. I never saw it again. Then another, calls I missed because my number had changed without me remembering doing it. My mom insisting she'd handled some identity verification issues for me. At the time, I trusted them. Now, every single moment felt curated, controlled. You intercepted it, didn't you? I said quietly. Neither of them spoke. "You've been managing this the entire time," I continued, "waiting for the moment you could actually use it." My dad's voice hardened. "See, we raised you." There it was. Not denial, justification. I nodded slowly. "And that gives you the right to what's mine?" His jaw tightened, but again, no denial. That was all I needed. I took a small step back, putting space between us. Not dramatic, just deliberate. "I want to hear it clearly," I said, turning once more to the lawyer. "What exactly is tied to my identity?" Another hesitation. Longer this time, because this wasn't just legal anymore, it was public, but I didn't break eye contact. Finally, he spoke. "There is a trust," he said carefully, "established under your legal identity. It becomes fully accessible upon final verification of your records." A trust. The word settled heavily, but it also explained everything. "From who?" I asked. This time the lawyer didn't look at my parents. "Your biological parents." The room reacted immediately. Quiet gasps, a sharp inhale somewhere behind me. But I didn't turn. I didn't need to, because I could feel it now, the full shape of what they'd done. They didn't just keep a secret. They built a plan around it. Years of control, timing, pressure. And tonight? This wasn't a revelation. It was an execution. I let the silence stretch one more time before asking the question that mattered most. "How much?" The lawyer hesitated. My dad stepped forward again, voice tight. "That's not relevant." "It is to me," I said without looking at him. Another pause. Then finally, "A substantial amount," the lawyer replied. "Enough to require strict identity confirmation protocols." That was careful language, but the meaning was clear. Life-changing. I nodded once. Everything inside me felt still. Clear. Because now there was no confusion left, no missing pieces, just one final decision. I looked at my parents, really looked at them, at the people who had raised me, managed me, positioned me, and then chose this moment to try to take everything tied to my name. I reached for the folder. My dad exhaled, relief flickering across his face too quickly to hide. He thought he'd won, that I'd finally do what they'd been pushing toward all along. I took the folder from the lawyer's hands, opened it, flipped through just enough pages to confirm what I already knew. Then I closed it again. Slowly, carefully, and instead of picking up the pen, I set the entire thing back down on the table between us. "I'm not signing anything," I said. The relief on my dad's face shattered instantly. You don't understand," he started. "No," I cut in, my voice calm but final. "I understand exactly." My mom stepped forward now, panic finally breaking through. "Ilara, if you walk away from this—" I met her eyes, and for the first time all night, she looked uncertain. "Then what?" I asked. Neither of them answered, because they couldn't. And that silence? That was the real truth. I straightened slightly, my decision already made. Then I said the one thing neither of them was prepared for. "I'm leaving." My dad's voice dropped, sharp and urgent. "If you walk out that door, don't expect to come back." I didn't even hesitate. I looked him dead in the eye and replied, "After tonight, why would I?" And I turned toward the exit. But just before I reached the door, the lawyer spoke again. "Miss Voss," he said carefully, "there is one more detail you should know." My hand paused on the handle. I didn't turn around. "Say it." A brief silence. Then, the trust was never accessible to them in the first place. I slowly turned back, and in that moment, everything shifted again. The trust was never accessible to them in the first place. For a second, no one moved. Not me, not my parents, not even the guests who had been watching this unravel like something they weren't supposed to see. I turned fully this time, my hand still resting on the door, and looked straight at the lawyer. "Explain." He adjusted his stance, like he'd already said more than he was supposed to. But there was no putting it back now. The assets tied to your identity, he said carefully, were structured so that only you, upon independent verification, could access or authorize anything. No guardianship clause, no transfer rights, nothing. I let that settle. Then I looked at my parents, really looked at them. All that planning, all that control, all of it built on something they were never actually entitled to touch. So this, I said slowly, gesturing to the room, the folder, the entire setup, was never about you getting access. My dad didn't answer. He didn't need to, because now it made sense in a different way. You just needed me to sign something that would give you a way in, I continued, something I didn't fully understand. Silence. My mom's composure finally cracked. We raised you, she said again, but this time it wasn't firm. It was desperate. We took care of you when no one else did. And I paid you back, I replied, my voice steady. For years. That part landed harder than anything else I'd said, because it was true. Every bill I covered, every debt I helped clear, every time I stepped in to fix something they couldn't handle anymore, I thought I was helping my family. But standing there now, it felt different, transactional, like I'd been repaying something that was never meant to be repaid, while they were waiting for something bigger. I took a slow breath. You didn't tell me because you needed control, I said, and tonight you thought pressure would finish it. My dad's voice came out tight. We deserved something. There it was. Clear, unfiltered, not confusion, not justification, entitlement. I nodded once. No. Oh, you didn't. The room reacted again, subtle but undeniable. People shifting, distancing, reevaluating everything they thought they knew about my parents. That was the part they hadn't planned for. Not just losing me, but losing the room. I turned back to the lawyer. What happens now? He answered without hesitation this time. You'll need independent counsel, full identity verification. After that, everything transfers under your sole authority. Clean, direct, no loopholes. I nodded, then looked once more at my parents. There wasn't anything left to ask. No hidden layer, no final twist, just the reality of what they'd done and what it cost them. Don't contact me again, I said. Not loud, not emotional, final. My mom took a step forward like she was going to argue, but stopped when I didn't move. Because for the first time, I wasn't waiting for their approval. I turned, opened the door, and walked out. No one followed. The fallout didn't take long. By the next week, people knew, not just what happened at the dinner, but why. The lawyer hadn't spoken publicly, but he didn't have to. Enough guests had seen, heard, and pieced it together. My parents' version of events didn't hold up under even basic questions. Business partnerships started pulling back. Quietly at first, then not so quietly. A few legal inquiries surfaced too, nothing immediate, but enough to put them under scrutiny. The kind that doesn't go away quickly. And without me, things started to slip. Financially, socially, structurally, everything I'd been holding together without realizing it. As for me, I didn't go back, not for closure, not for answers. There wasn't anything left there that belonged to me. Instead, I met with my own lawyer, reviewed everything properly, every document, every record, every piece of my identity that had been filtered through someone else my entire life. For the first time, I saw it clearly. My real name, my biological parents' history, the trust they left behind, not just money, but intention. It wasn't complicated. It wasn't hidden. It had just been kept from me. Verification took time, but not long. And when it was done, everything shifted. Not just financially, but mentally. There was no one managing things for me, no one positioning me, no quiet influence shaping decisions behind the scenes. Just me, fully in control of my own life for the first time. A few weeks later, I was standing in a new apartment. Empty, except for a single chair and a box of documents I hadn't finished going through yet. One envelope sat on top, addressed to me, but not the name I grew up with. My real name. I stared at it for a moment before opening it. Inside was a letter. Short. Simple. Written years ago. Not instructions, not conditions, just a message. something meant for me whenever I finally found my way to it. I read it once, then again, and for the first time since that night, I felt something settle. Not anger, not confusion, just clarity. I folded the letter carefully and set it back in the envelope. Then I looked around the quiet room. No voices, no pressure, no expectations. Nothing here belonged to anyone else, and nothing about me was being decided by someone else anymore. For the first time, my life wasn't something I had to question. It was something I owned,